In the beginning, God etched his laws into stone with his own finger. His commandments were not just rules, they were divine instructions meant to guide his people to rest, to holiness, and to a life of blessing. But somehow, over the centuries, a crucial commandment has been overlooked or misunderstood by millions of believers today. Exodus 31 verse 18 reveals that God gave Moses 2 tables of testimony, tables of stone written with the finger of God. These stone tablets weren't just ancient relics. They were a testimony of God's law, an eternal foundation for his people. But one commandment stands out among the rest, often disregarded in today's fast-paced world: the Sabbath. The 4th commandment calls us to remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days are for work, but the 7th day is set apart, sanctified by God himself. A day of rest, a holy convocation, a gift for the soul. As it says in Exodus 20 verse 8 to 11, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and hallowed it. This was God's divine pattern from the beginning, yet today many Christians have lost the deeper meaning of the Sabbath. Instead of a day of rest and spiritual renewal, it's often treated as just another day if it's observed at all. But the Bible doesn't leave room for misunderstanding. In Leviticus 23 verse 3, we're told clearly, 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest and holy convocation. Ye shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings. It's not just about ceasing work. It's about holiness, about setting apart a day to commune with God. In Luke 4 verse 16, we see Jesus, the very Son of God, honoring the Sabbath, and he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and, as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up for to read. Even Jesus, who had the authority to change the law, continued to observe the Sabbath, setting the perfect example for us. The Sabbath isn't just a rule, it's a blessing. It's a time to reset, to renew, and to be reminded of the Creator's provision. In Deuteronomy 28 verse 1 to 2, God promises blessings for those who diligently hearken to his voice and obey his commandments. It says, "And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. And all these blessings shall come on thee and overtake thee, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God." The Sabbath is a direct invitation to experience those blessings, a day of peace that overtakes us when we rest in God's perfect plan. But what happens when we ignore this command? In Deuteronomy 28:15, God warns of the curses that come with disobedience. "But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee." Could the struggles many face in today's world, burnout, stress, exhaustion, be a reflection of our collective neglect of God's command to rest? Millions of Christians are unknowingly missing out on the full blessing of God's design, The Sabbath isn't just a relic of the past, it's a living command for today, and it's never been more vital than in our restless, overworked world. It's time to return to the Sabbath, to remember the rest God called us to find blessings in obedience, to experience the holiness He offers, and to refresh our souls in His presence. Will you take a step towards true rest? This is the Sabbath, God's gift, His command, and His invitation to you. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for part 3.